Welcome to Searching Smarter with Selby Jennings, the podcast for hiring managers and professionals navigating the job market within financial sciences and services. Whether you're searching for top talent to grow your team or considering your own career move, this podcast will help you do so with confidence. I'm your host, Jesse Scaff, Global Client Director for Faden International's Financial Sciences and Services brand, Selby Jennings.
My guest this week is John Jurasin, 15-year recruitment veteran who has worked in supply chain and vendor management across manufacturing, IT, healthcare, and financial services. Today we'll be talking about what we learned from the 2024 recruitment market, how it differed from 2023, and why it is the opposite end of the spectrum from the post-COVID hiring booms. I thought 2023 was the extreme. It turns out that 2023 was a bit of just a cool down from previous, and how we can apply these lessons to 2025. We also talk about the best way candidates on the sidelines can make themselves stand out and get back in the game. So if you're trying to time your next career move, this episode's for you. Really, I want to get your take on what has the recruitment market taught us this year in 2024?
Yeah, recruitment market this year has been, for lack of better terms, a bit crazy, right? I'm going to say worse than slow, right? So this year specifically, we've seen a lot of our clients and leading side of the financial service industry turn the taps off, right? It's created a difficult space, but at the same time, opportunity. And what I mean by opportunity is not necessarily the flow of candidates, but also the opportunity to partner a little bit further with particular clients and showing a little bit more work in this slow time, right? And I think that's extremely important because if you can show your work and your true partnership in the slow time, when things pick back up, and they inevitably always do, you will be that first phone call from a client in need, right? And if you're there by their side, closeness. But at the same time, I will say, right back to your question, it's been extremely slow in all markets, right? Financial, healthcare, manufacturing. It's been kind of a wild ride this year, and everybody's just trying to kind of sort some things out.
Interesting comment you make about being the first call, and that's a significant part of our function. And everyone on my team, we whether we say it or think it every day or not, one of our principal guidelines is to make sure we are always being a value-add service to our clients, even during the quiet times, what we internally call foul weather, having foul weather relationships, so that when our clients do get an opportunity to make one phone call, we are the first one. And it comes from, as you say, various value-add material, staying in touch, just checking in, being a human being. And there's been a lot of that, not just this year, but last year as well. And to that point, though, why is 2024 different from 2023? What made these 2 years different? Because 2023, as far as recruitment goes, was also quieter, but it's felt different than this year.
If you look at the patterns of the last few years, when we took a look at the hiring trends with COVID, right? It blew up, right? Everyone was on the market. Everybody's apps were on completely, if you will. And we were moving forward at such a fast pace that we couldn't get enough clientele, right? We couldn't get enough people in the door for our clients, and everyone had a need. And then into 2023, we started to see a blip of a decline. And I think that's kind of where it started, but in particular niches, right? If we recall 2023, we had a big upside in the IT sector, right? Technology, and a lot of right sizing in that space. I think that was like the first dominant, if you will. And manufacturing happened either right before or shortly after, I would say, but in the same context. And then 2023, at the end of the year, we saw the dominant players in the market right sizing, and people in the service industry to assist in filling positions had to understand that, right? They had to jump when they had the opportunity, and that exacerbated into 2024. Continuing that potential downward spirals, except for specific nations.
You're leading into something that I think is a highly relevant point, and I think on our side, and unfortunately, I'll readily admit, I was not entirely correct about it, where I thought the pendulum had swung, from the extremes of 2021, 2022, the post-COVID opportunity and boon and just take advantage of the world and markets being back, the pendulum had totally swung. I thought 2023 was the extreme. It turns out that 2023 was a bit of just a cool down from previous, and 2024 was really the year of the tight purse strings and a much more conservative approach, an internal approach as far as using agencies or hiring goes, right? Clients were still hiring, but the spend to hire was much less, and organizations were getting a lot more creative. Their internal, mobility teams or tactics and opportunities to allow candidates to be directly sourced or anything like that. Whereas, it was kind of a Wild West free-for-all for a couple of years. So the pendulum swung through 2023 all the way to the other side of 2024.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point. There was a huge, mix-up on wanting to look internally, right? Look to hire internal and use internal resources instead of branching out to third party as usual, right? You make a valid point. The pendulum was still swinging from 2023 to 2024, but I think that we're still finding where that middle ground is going to be, and I think it's never going to get back to 2022. It's never going to get back to 2021, but we are still looking for that meeting. And it's going to get there. It's going to swing back to the other side, if you will.
Almost to just like the pre-COVID norms, right? The 2018s, the 2019s that were just, maybe from February or March to November was just a more traditional recruiting cycle.
And I think to your point, everyone was dealing with, shipping services being cut off, the big R word, right? Recession, if you will. I don't know if I was supposed to say that or not. I did. We're not in a recession, but I think there was preparedness, right, with major industries. And I think that a lot of service sectors were nervous, and that nervousness made them want to cut costs. And I think that's where we are sitting in 2024, is trying to factor in what's next. And plus, not to mention, there's always a swing in an election year, right? And that's kind of a big side of things. And so we're trying to understand where things are still going to land in that medium space where we can see what happens. If we can get back to the pre-COVID times, which was great, right? You have to remember, we had a major disruption in the space. COVID hit everyone hard. And there was a hiring boom after that. And that brought in the hybrid space, that brought in the working externally, and a lot of different spins. And that's where we are. We're still trying to figure all of that out right now.
Yes, and certain industries are feeling it worse than others, and some are not feeling it as much, or are able to be a little bit more, liberal in their growth plans or what have you. But you mentioned one R word. I want to bring up two more R words, and kind of comparing, staying with the trend, but transitioning a little bit, comparing the previous 2 years to these last 2 years. The Great Resignation, which was part of the massive hiring boom that we were in, to now the Great Retention, almost, right? And take it one step further, actually, the Great Non-Attrition. Resignations themselves are so far down. What do you think about that? Why do you think that is? And do you have a take on, how we came from the Great Resignation to the Great Retention?
Growth pattern for an individual seeking another spot in other organizations. I think with, like you mentioned, the purse strings being tightened or the caps being turned off, there's not that flow of cash into other opportunities for a lot of individuals at this moment. Because when you think about it, 2 or 3 years ago, if you technically jumped ship, you're getting a huge pay rate, right? You're getting a huge bump, and so coaches have gotten more expensive. The common everyday items have gotten more expensive. People are less likely to jump ship for a minimal number that is now, right? That would be offered now than previously, where you're going to get 20-30% bump if you move somewhere else. So people are sitting tight at the moment. And I think organizations are realizing that, and they're doing a lot of things to retain, right? They want that retention as well at the same time.
Do you think it is more an overt intention for retention by clients, Or do you think it's more candidate driven where they're kind of seeing, especially in financial services, right, where bonuses haven't been so strong, only particular teams within banks especially are performing, kind of to or above standard. Therefore, there isn't really anywhere to go, right? They're not going to leave maybe a bank that paid an okay, a publicly okay bonus this year to go join another bank that paid a publicly okay bonus this year, right? Do you think it's more the client retention or the candidate just, not really being interested in resigning because there's nowhere to go?
I want to say it's a mix of both, to be frank. I mean, it definitely is. It's what we've seen, except for particular niches, right? There are some sectors out there where they're gonna fluctuate for the right person, right? But that's a very niche position. But overall, I think we're dealing with kind of understanding the candidate view of, I'm comfortable in my space right now, being paid adequately and being paid well. Why am I going to try to go exert myself into another area where it's not a sure thing, right? And at the same time, we're seeing some retention, I guess you could say, practices, right, a little bit better, right, with organizations that they want to keep them. They're trying to throw everything they can out, whether that be sitting out bonus days to organizations for PTO or potential internal smaller segment and bonuses here and there to retain.
Completely agree. It's so dynamic. There's so much to be. I really don't envy any global heads of TA or global heads of HR these days. It's a tight wire. It's a balancing act for sure. At the same time, right, where there are candidates who are a little bit more, reluctant to resign, maybe because the opportunities aren't as great as they were the last few years, cost-cutting measures are still being taken, right? There are teams that are being dissolved, and the traditional Goldman Sachs bottom 3 to 7% being cut is happening. Obviously, Goldman did it, but that's happening, more across the street, and especially on the buy side as well. They're always looking to have good attrition, right, to improve their lower performers. That means there's talent on the sidelines. So is there a difference, or how can those candidates who may be out of work or have been, part of downsizing as cost-cutting measures, how can they stay fresh? How can they stay active in the market, even if the right opportunity hasn't come about, perfectly for them right now? But how can those on the sidelines candidates get back in the game, or at least stay relevant?
Yeah, I think 100%. First and foremost, reach out to great organizations such as Mid International, right? Reach out to organizations that are going to have the opportunity to flag these successful individuals to their clients, but at the same time, don't get hard on yourself, right? The majority of this is not a personal decision. It's a up top decision so that the wheel of the organization keeps spinning, right? It's purely a financial decision in this market. So just like we said, the caps have been put up. And so organizations are trying to think how they can resource, restructure, right size, and rebrand themselves into other areas with huge cost cutting measures. And so unfortunately, large pockets of people are being affected by this. And so my suggestion is reach out to those past contacts that you've worked with, right? The organization prompt you, be your champion in the organization. Keep your routine. Keep your routine. Like, keep that sanity up. Right? If you were up at 7 for 8:30 meet, right? Keep that same routine. Keep that staying. Right? Have some motivation there. And whether it's applying, for jobs, or reaching out to 4 or 5 companies that you used to work with, right? Or previously, that know your skill set, know your knowledge, and will be your champion. Those are the things that are going to help you.
That makes perfect sense. And, finding a job is a full-time job. That's not a secret. And sure, absolutely, recruiting agencies can help and that kind of thing. But networking is so important, and reaching out to, former employers, former bosses, former colleagues, and anyone who you might consider to be a reference. Well, why wait until they need to be a reference? Leverage them as a network as well, maybe on the front end first. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. It's been a great chat today. Really, really happy to get your opinions and your insights. Obviously, an industry veteran who's seen a lot of different corners of a lot of different buildings and a lot of different corners of the recruitment industry. So thanks, John, for being here and for contributing your insights.
Yeah. My pleasure, Jason. For the opportunity. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
That's all for today's episode of Searching Smarter. If you found this conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Until next time, keep searching smarter.